Everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian for Liberty, FabianForLiberty.com. Remember, you can get my new book on the Global Economic Reset on Amazon. Global Economic Reset book is all you have to search, or click the link down below. So, I have routinely been criticized by people when I speak about World War III. Just so we're clear, I hope World War III doesn't happen. I pray it doesn't happen. I have two small children. I don't want them to grow up in a world that is in a world war. But the facts that I'm going to lay out today are just that, they're facts. And if you look at these facts through the lens of history, particularly the World War I, which we are on the 100th year of anniversary of here over the next couple of weeks, and if you have read a book called The Fourth Turning, or if you've studied the way that the ancients looked at history in 100-year cycles, you should be a little bit freaked out right now. Okay, maybe not freaked out, but maybe you should be awake to it. Maybe you should be kind of just understanding past Fox News and CNN and their lowbrow kind of jingoistic pumping up of the war states and the war drums that we repeatedly hear from Obama and the West. Now, the peacenik fraudster-in-chief Barack Hussein Obama, who was elected as being this peaceful guy, wanted to restore America's role in the world, is literally doing everything he can. And I gotta preface this with saying he's not the guy in charge. It's his handlers are doing everything that they can to stoke the flames of World War III, of a larger regional war, and that is abundantly clear. Now, I have studied World War I in depth. I've read probably about 25 plus books on the subject, not just World War I. And World War I didn't just happen with the murder of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. No, it started 20 years before in what started to be trade wars that began to break out. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the sanctions underway right now against the Russians by the West are just that. And yesterday, Bloomberg was reporting, as well as the Wall Street Journal and many other publications, that Russia has now fired back on the sanctions. And I want to read over some of that, then get into some additional chest pounding that's going on by NATO, by Chuck Hagel, the so-called Defense Secretary of the United States. I don't know how they can call him the Defense Secretary, because they're actually making the defenses of America actually worse, making the prospects for war greater. But here we have countries throughout Europe that are part of the EU, who many of them are in depression mode if it wasn't for the ECB creating liquidity and all kinds of other financial gimmicks that have been taking place. Take, for example, Poland, for example, and really the Baltic countries in general, but not just them, Greece, the Italians, are already reeling from the Russians basically cutting food imports into Russia, from places like Poland, from places like Slovakia, from Ukraine. Ukraine, the breadbasket of the world, is now having, and not only the breadbasket of the world, one of the breadbaskets of the world, but also a country that already is on the verge of financial implosion with renewed riots in the streets of Kiev today, has had much of their milk, poultry, eggs, all kinds of other food staples. The Russians have basically banned those from entering the Soviet Union or entering Russia. And really, what I meant to say is like the Soviet EU is what it's become. And I think a lot of these countries will eventually cave. Most of them didn't want to go along with the sanctions to begin with. In Poland, for example, the backlash, the backfire from Russia now banning imports of foods into Russia is going to cost the Polish economy over $1 billion. And I have here a list of there's just so many to get to. Exports from the U.S. to Russia, chickens, and a bunch of other stuff have already collapsed 34%. Now, who is that hurting? That's hurting the U.S. economy, which really is already in much pain, unless, of course, you believe that the economy grew 4% the last quarter. So clearly, this notion that America and the West can now bully Russia with these sanctions to basically, have a go along, get along attitude to cooperate with the IMF dictatorship that basically has run the world for the last 50 plus years is clearly not working out so well. You see, sanctions may work against a country like Iran, and they might be able to collapse the economy of Iran, but it doesn't work so well against the Russians. Now, you would think that the peacenik president, fraudster-in-chief Obama would actually be trying to find some kind of general consensus here to stop the drumbeat in marching to World War III, but he's done just the opposite. Yesterday in the White House, he gave a statement where he was talking about how the Russians don't build anything, their demographics are dwindling, people aren't trying to, get into Moscow, immigrants aren't fleeing to Moscow. Well, maybe they're not fleeing to Moscow, fraudster-in-chief, because the fact is that Moscow, on the collapse of the Soviet Union, stopped the entire nanny state, welfare state that they used to have. The same exact welfare state that you've expanded here in America that was failed repeatedly all over the world. They're not implementing that anymore. So no wonder they don't have masses of barbarian hordes, i.e. illegals, flooding to Moscow, because there's no free stuff to be had there. But with that said, you would think this president would actually be saying things that would maybe calm down the rhetoric, but instead he's doubling down on it. He is saying things to sneer and to embolden, I believe, the Russians. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the Russian people, unlike here at home in America, are behind Putin. Can't say that for the American people behind this fraudster, because people know he's a fraudster. And look, if you're watching these videos because you're a radical liberal who watches these videos to later make comments about them on your blog that no one reads, the point is that you've been totally scammed as well. Person you elected that you thought, would somehow be able to restore America's role in the world is clearly not able to do so. Because the only order, he's never actually established order. He's just established chaos as a community organizer in Chicago. Simply chaos by ginning up the mobs to just get more free stuff. That's what he's good at. I'll give him that. But when it comes to actually running what once used to be, actually, when he was elected, the largest free market economy of the world, or for that matter, the largest military in the world, or one of the strongest militaries in the world, he's levied destruction to both. And now he's levying destruction to cooperation that has taken place for 30 plus years between the Russians and America post the Cold War. But now we're back, ladies and gentlemen, to trade wars, which appear to be potentially leading to hot wars. Now, don't take my word for that. Let's just listen to what the NATO, the head of NATO had to say, or Chuck Hagel, U.S. Defense Secretary, where both are saying that a Russian invasion of Ukraine is imminent, with now Russia having over 25,000 troops along the Ukrainian-Russian border. That's their estimates. I would say they're probably much higher than that. And not only that, they've been doing all kinds of military drills right along the U.S. border, or right along the Ukrainian-Russian border. And we know that the Ukrainian military, backed by the West, has actually made pretty significant inroads into eastern Ukraine, with the end goal, the end prize there being the massive amounts of shale in eastern Ukraine that could unlock natural gas to fuel Ukraine's economy and to warm the homes in Europe over the winter. Now, the Russians aren't going to allow that to happen. They're not going to allow the IMF and the West to go in and basically steal and hijack the shale gas in eastern Ukraine. It's just not going to happen. So, what's going to happen? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know history. And I do know that in the last 10 days, you've had 16 incursions into U.S. airspace by Russian bombers. Pentagon reporting on that. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I can tell you that just like in World War I, we have an incompetence of leadership that, quite frankly, makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. We have an IMF and a central bank that is so bankrupt, so criminal, that personally I believe that they may likely want war to mask how they're destroying the dollar and the U.S. economy. One last point regarding the dollar. We've had Hong Kong central bank buying up over $10 billion of U.S. dollars as more and more countries dump the dollar, particularly Russian companies that haven't even been sanctioned, dumping the U.S. dollar, adding yet again more pressure, not just to the U.S. dollar, but to the entire world reserve currency system. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, you bet your bottom dollar, Western European countries are reconsidering their alliances with the U.S., economically speaking, because it leaves the potential for their countries to yet again enter fierce depressions as we see these sanctions backfiring. I'm Fabian Calvo, Fabian for Liberty. I'd love to hear your comments. Post them down below. And am I wrong on this? Is this just, Barack Obama creating more peace? And according to his administration, the world's never been more stable. And am I just, I hope that this is just considered right-wing crazy propaganda. As I've always said, I hope I'm wrong about this. I don't want World War III. I'm not cheerleading for World War III. But again, being a student of history and seeing how incredibly eerie the similarities are between 100 years ago and now, yeah, I'm a little concerned. Thanks for watching. I'm out.